We're joined on the line by Lindy Lee. Lindy currently helps to lead Asian American political outreach for Joe Biden, was picked to be one of his DNC delegates for the 3rd Congressional District of Pennsylvania. She's a proud moderate conservative Democrat, ran for Congress in the previous cycle and holds a leadership position within the DNC. She's been in the news recently because she's been the subject of some pretty vicious attacks by the Bernie Bros online. Lindy, thanks so much for joining the Ben Shapiro Show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Lindy, why don't you explain, first of all, what exactly happened here? What made you, a Democrat, the subject of so many attacks by the Bernie Bros, and who are they and what did they do?
It was unbelievable. This has been going on for months now. This wasn't an isolated incident. It started in January when somebody thanked me for supporting a Jewish community. Every time there's an anti-Semitic attack, I would tweet about it and condemn it. And just someone thanked me for being a Ruth. And for people who aren't familiar with that, Ruth is somebody who wasn't Jewish herself, but supported the Jewish community. And in that tweet, in the same tweet, she said Sanders is a self-hating Jew. And so I retweeted that primarily because she thanked me for sticking up for Jews. And I thought that was a perfectly fine thing to say. But that just set the Bernie Bros off. So I was suddenly called an anti-Semite, a piece of racist, and all sorts of things that I probably shouldn't be repeating on air. But it was traumatic for me. I'm a member of AIPAC. I support AIPAC. This is just, it's inconceivable to me. I go to Shabbat. Most of my friends are Jewish. So to hear suddenly that I am a bigot was just unbelievable. And I got a confession from one of these Bernie Bros saying that my actual crime wasn't anti-Semitism. My actual crime was political moderation and being on the conservative side of the Democratic Party. And frankly, if they keep this up, there aren't going to be many of us left. And so that happened a month ago. But just last week, I tweeted a video that had actually been posted many years ago. And in that video, Bernie Sanders praises communist Russia. And I tweeted it out. It was fine. I mean, I got the usual, flack from Bernie supporters, but it wasn't anything intolerable. It was just like, you have brainworms and you're stupid and stuff like that. But Bill Kristol retweeted it, and that launched a chain reaction. Various high-profile commentators retweeted the video at all, and millions of people ended up seeing that video. It was included in the 60 Minutes clip. And that was the beginning of just a week of truly just unbelievable hell. They went after my brother, who's still in college, a teenager. I was frankly afraid to show my face. I stayed in my apartment for a number of days. It was harrowing. I've never seen anything like it. I just remember staring into the darkness at 4 a.m. thinking my heart is pounding. How do I make it stop? Just thousands of attacks. Like, Lindy, you're a pathological liar. And all I did was share a video of things he actually said. And frankly, they gave me much more credit. I'm not that technologically advanced. I don't know how to dub voices or change videos. It's what he said. It was extracted from Vermont Public Television.
Right.
And sorry for going on and on, but this whole thing has just been such a traumatic experience.
Well, I mean, it is true, and the Bernie Bros are widely known for being some of the worst people online. As far as the Jewish attack, it's always ironic to me when I hear people who are very upset at anybody who makes an oblique reference to Bernie Sanders not being an incredible Jew, because he's very, of course, proud to be a Jew, when he is hobnobbing with open anti-Semites like Linda Sarsour, Ilhan Omar, and Rashida Tlaib, and then recently came out, as in this week, and said that he's going to not go to AIPAC because AIPAC is filled with racists, while simultaneously embracing a foreign aid to Hamas. It's just, I have questions for people who are deeply concerned about Chris Matthews talking about World War II in a completely different context, and suddenly he's an anti-Semite, but Bernie can be as anti-Israel and hobnob with as many anti-Semites as he wants. And if you point this out, then this makes you an anti-Semite. So how much of this did you feel was organized? So I remember back in 2016, I took a fairly unpopular position. I didn't vote for either of the major candidates, and I got just waves of hate, particularly from the alt-right. And it felt like it was organized at a fairly high level, that it was a specific group of trolls, and they were just going to just hit you and hit you and hit you and hit you. How much of this do you think is coming from an organized place? How much of you think do you think is just sort of Twitter mobbing? And frankly, what do you think Bernie should do about it? Because I will admit, Lindy, I'm a little bit of split mind. On the one hand, I think that Bernie has an actual obligation to tell his people to shut up. On the other hand, I mean, Bernie has a lot of followers, and it would be very difficult for him to control all of his followers. How much of this do you think is due to Bernie, and how much of it do you think is just the radicalism of Bernie's agenda attracts radicals?
absolutely think that the rot starts at the top. You have people like Glenn Greenwald, and David, the guy who, always releases doctored videos. These people are on his staff. That he hired them. He hired the most vicious attackers. To say that he has no control over his supporters is completely disingenuous. And it's just, what does his supporters hope to achieve? I'm not going to suddenly vote for him because he called me I am so never Bernie. I can't even describe it. And it's almost funny how he almost makes Trump look good. And by the way, I just want to make clear that I've never once been attacked by MAGA people, not once. And I've never had kind things to say about President Trump. Never in my life have I praised him, but they've never attacked me. They've never tried to make me feel subhuman. And frankly, it's just, I can't believe it. And people are actually going to remove me from the delegate ballot. I have a screenshot of Bernie supporters plotting to take me off the ballot to disqualify me. That is it just shows me who they are.
So, Lindy, looking at sort of where the Democratic Party is going, obviously, South Carolina is widely perceived to be sort of Joe Biden's last stand, that if Biden doesn't hold back Bernie in South Carolina, basically this race is over. Michael Bloomberg is tossing hundreds of millions of dollars into the race, but it looks like it could be too little, too late. If Bernie's already won the first few primaries and if he's got all the momentum, then Bloomberg stepping in last minute is unlikely to stop the Bernie surge. Let's assume for a second that Bernie does win the nomination. How many people do you think are like in the Democratic Party? Obviously, Biden has a very solid base of support. How many people do you think are actually never Bernie? How many people do you think are going to stay home if Bernie is the nominee? And how many people do you think are just going to swivel behind Sanders no matter what, just because they dislike Trump?
That's sad. The last group that you mentioned, I find that extremely despicable. I for one, would never vote for Bernie under any circumstances. And I'm a Democrat, and I've never voted for a Republican for president. But this is just too much. It's like psychic trauma. And I have, by the way, the Bernie group infiltrated our Twitter DM groups and screenshotted private discussions. So that's just a picture of who they are. And those people in the groups that I mentioned, they are never Bernie. And we have hundreds of people. And we didn't start out this way. His supporters made us this way.
Well, Lindy Lee, really appreciate your time. And thanks for speaking truth, even when it's unpopular inside your own party. Lindy Lee, of course, is helping to lead Asian American political outreach for Joe Biden. Lindy, good luck on everything, and we'll keep in touch and hopefully check back in with you as the election moves forward.
Thank you so much. And I'm really proud of you for speaking your truth, too.
I appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed that clip from The Ben Shapiro Show. If you did, go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you stay up to date on all of our future content.